from the Council of American Islamic Relations found that 40% of Michigan's Muslim American voting population plan to back Green Party candidate Jill Stein. 18% plan to support President Trump. 12% want VP Harris, and 4% plan to vote for Cornel West. This seems pretty significant, Kyle, specifically after more than 100,000 voters in Michigan in the primary voted uncommitted. Is this a massive red flag for the Harris campaign, given that there's only about 7 weeks until Election Day?
It is, and for a couple reasons. I mean, think about the mainstream coverage of Donald Trump and Muslims. It is 100% negative. And so the fact that this poll shows, and it's a CARE poll, which, CARE does not like Donald Trump. But the fact that this poll shows that more Michigan Muslims support Donald Trump than supports Kamala Harris is, that is major. But then when you look at the top line of the poll, and it shows that 40% of Michigan Muslims support Jill Stein, to me, that is major red flags for Harris. And there's been a lot of coverage about the fact that is RFK going to Jill Stein. To me, that is major red flags for Harris. And there's been a lot of coverage about the fact that is RFK going to be on the ballot? Is he not going to be on the ballot in Michigan? Cornel West, as RFK was put back on the ballot, Cornel West was also put on the ballot, and so he theoretically is going to take votes away from Kamala Harris. But she has a major problem with Michigan Muslims because they don't like what Biden has done, and she, of course, has, in their opinion, has not been outspoken enough. And so this is a very significant problem for her because there are hundreds of thousands of Muslims who are very paying attention to what is going on. And so I think what we'll see is that this is going to get worse.
So you saw that and you heard that, folks. The bad news just keeps on piling and piling and piling. It's like a snowball on the top of a mountaintop. And it just starts out like about, this big or this small. And as it continues to roll down, it continues to gather more snow. When it gets on the bottom, it just knocks everything out. That's exactly what's happening. We're going to get into all of that right now. We're going to talk about this thing here, folks. You're watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. So, folks, we're also going to talk about the Atlas Intel poll that just dropped. Devastating news showing that Trump is up about 3% nationally. All right, next bit of bad news. The Green Party candidate, Jill Stein, now allowed to be on all the ballots in the battleground states and across the United States. Another huge win. Pennsylvania Supreme Court rules that ballots that are not dated or don't have a date on them or don't have chain of custody, will not be valid. This is a big change from what they allowed back in the 2020 elections when they allowed ballots to come in from everywhere. Another huge win in Pennsylvania, in North Carolina, in Michigan. RFK, you heard here where this video that it was produced before, they were saying that RFK was still on the ballot in Michigan. Not true anymore. Not true. RFK successfully was able to remove his name from the ballot in Michigan, from the ballot in North Carolina. In fact, here in North Carolina, they were crying about that they have to reprint all the ballots and they've got to work overtime and they've got to get everything done all over again. And it's just, the democracy is being ruined or whatever. Really? The guy says he doesn't want to be on the ballot. I want it removed so there's no confusion. I'm backing another candidate. Why aren't you complying with what somebody wants to do? They're the ones that are running, not you guys. So then there's that. So all of these news. And then on top of it, that poll just drops. An Atlas Intel, according to everybody out there, it was the best poll. And we'll show you some of the numbers in terms of that back in 2020. And not a lot of people have heard about them or whatever. But the second best was Rasmussen. I think they were, the average amount of error on Atlas Intel was 2.2. I believe it was 2.8 on Rasmussen, I think 2.6 on Trafalgar or whatever, but we'll check those and take a look at that. But over and over and over again, this is what I've been telling people. Michigan is also a state where they had the uncommitted vote. But then there's another group out there, a huge group, and they're just not the uncommitted. Dr. Abdus Salam in Michigan, he has a coalition that's called, it was Abandon Biden. And once they shoved Biden off a cliff, it went to Abandon Harris. And the entire thing for this group is punish. That's it. Punish the current administration. If that means you bring in Trump, so be it. That's what they're doing. So there's no compromise with them. It's not like some of the uncommitteds vote uncommitted, but they still might be voting for, Kamala Harris, and the Democrats. But folks, take a look at this here. This is what we're talking about. Wisconsin. In Wisconsin. Arizona. She's at 29% in Arizona. He's about half, 15. Michigan. He's getting more votes in Michigan, 18%, 33% more votes, and she is at 12%. Folks, this is absolutely devastating. Devastating, devastating, devastating. And if you think that this is enough, let's take a look at that Atlas poll that I was talking about. We're going to go to that and watch this, folks. So, folks, here we are. So this is Atlas Intel on their X page. It was the most accurate pollster of the 2020 presidential cycle, average error of 2.2. If you're looking at Nate Silver and you think he's, pretty good, he put a list of the best performing polls that were out there. All right, so if you take a look right here, you'll see Atlas Intel, average error was 2.2%, and the races they called correctly was around 71 races they called, correctly. All right, 71% they did. Now, take a look at Rasmussen. It was 2.8. Now, a lot of people, they talk about, Rasmussen and say that it is a right-leaning poll, it's right-wing or whatever. Actually, if you take a look at their demographic models and the way they weight their polls, they weight their polls the same. Every single poll is weighted and calculated, and they were doing it at +2 Democrat. +2. Wasn't +R, it was +2 for the Democrats. In fact, Mark Mitchell, if you take a look at his site, he was saying many times that they were wondering maybe to go to a +3 model for Democrats, is what he was talking about. And then there's Trafalgar. I guess the thing with they said they called 50% of their races, but they were only off on the errors 2.6. And so, you could have that conversation. Are you calling the, races correctly in terms of, who's winning or losing? Or where are you in terms of your average error? And I guess there are things, both people, proponents, can come back and say, well, if you're close on your percentages, but for example, in 2022, that whole red wave, but wasn't factored into the equation was the amount of anger and the amount of single women that came out in those areas, even in the Midwest or flyover country, that abortion was still a huge issue. Then you contrast that and you put together with the fact that some of the candidates may not have been the best at that time. And all of a sudden, that big red wave wasn't, so large after all. So in those cases, they might have been close in terms of, their how far they were average error-wise into a percentage of people that were going to vote. But they could have been off a few percentage points and still called the race incorrectly, because of that. So if you continue through here, you just take a look, and they say that the Trump's advantage, this was like less than a day ago, 2.9% in the national popular vote. Now, when they did this back in July, look at where they were back in July. In July of 2024, Harris was at 48, Trump was at 50.1. She has stayed at 48 over the past, months. He's gone up 50.9. So since the last time they've done this tracking, he's up 0.8 Now, if you take a look at the debate performances according to Atlas Intel, and this is another thing that I talk about, is whether or not you want to give Trump, a C, a D, an F, whatever. The narrative that was being done by the legacy media, the alphabet networks, was that he got his ass kicked all over the place. He took the bait. He left meat on the bone. He was distracted. He didn't get his point across. Folks, I've had other videos. You can take a look at those links when they did the dial focus groups. On every issue that Trump talked about, when he talked about inflation, when he talked about safety and security, when he talked about the economy, when he talked about immigration, when he talked about those subjects, the independents tracked the Republicans. In fact, in some instances on the dial, the independents were above the Republicans in terms of what they liked. And they were with the Republicans in their dislike when Kamala Harris was talking about those same features. So listen, it's 90 minutes long debate. You want him to be honed in on every single minute of the debate? Come on, folks. So what? He got distracted, he went off on crowd size. So what if he get distracted and went off, on Springfield? So what if he talks about, this and that or whatever? He still got his point across. And New York Times, which is no fan of the Republicans or Trump at all, well, they had an op-ed piece out there too that said, Trump, Harris may have won the debate, quote unquote, but independents didn't think so. So there's that. And here you can see here, all voters, a B minus to Kamala Harris, a C plus. A C plus, folks. A C plus is, if I remember correctly, is what, 77 to 79%? Okay, so 79%, one more percent, he's at a B from all voters, and she's at a B minus. So she goes down a little bit, she's at a C, he's at a B. I mean, she goes down 3%, he goes up 3%, right? Now, among Democrats, they gave him a D. Of course, the Democrats, gave her an A minus. Independents gave him a C and a B minus. Very close. Republicans, a B plus. Gave Kamala Harris a C minus. Trump voters, B plus. C minus for Harris. And Kamala voters obviously gave Donald Trump a D. That's surprising. I thought they would have probably given him an E, maybe an E and an F. And A minus, to Kamala. So all of this is just to go to show you that there's a narrative out there. They want to keep this race and make it really, really looking close to the people. I don't think it's close at all. Check out some of my other videos where I have Trump right now at 345. I believe he's up +5 nationally, if I'm taking a look at the data. And I think the electorate is more to the right than, and I'm putting my thing out there a little bit because I think New Hampshire is going to flip to Trump. I think Minnesota is going to flip, and as well as New Mexico and Virginia. I don't believe that North Carolina is a swing state at all, because I believe that if Barack Obama couldn't win it, if Hillary Clinton couldn't win it, I just don't see how Kamala Harris is going to win it. I just don't see that at all. And if to make matters worse, let's take a look at a voter out there, I believe in Pennsylvania. He's been asked this question. He's on one of his TikTok things, and he's a Kamala guy, but he's basically saying Kamala didn't answer his questions, but Trump did. Watch this.
She was asked twice, right, during the debate and this interview she had on ABC. And twice they asked her how she was going to make American lives better. She didn't have an answer. What are you going to do to help us, right? And then what, like 3 weeks ago, Trump comes out with the no tax on tips. That's going to help people that are waiters, waitresses, bartenders, valet parkers, anybody that works for tips. And then now, a few days ago, he comes out with no tax, right, on overtime. It's that kind of shit that helps Americans, right? So after sleeping on it for a while, I'm sorry, Kamala, but I'm voting for Trump, man. I'm gonna vote for the candidate that's gonna help my.
So there you have it, folks. I mean, what else can I say? What else is there to say? It's the news, as I said, is just bad poll after poll after poll. You're going to hear it, obviously, from you hear all these other pundits talking about it, but they're taking where the Yahoo polls, YouGov polls, Quinnipiac polls. These polls that have notoriously been off by 7, 8, 9, 10 points, folks. 10 points. Unbelievable. Anyways, folks, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I'm your host, Dr. Nasir. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel, like, share, and follow us. You all know what to do. Take a look at our other video links above and below. My final thought is always, when you're right, you're right. And when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.